It came on the radio that told me P1, I just like started screaming. I was like crying in my helmet. It was just such a milestone, like an achievement that like I belong here. The only guarantee from paralysis is that if you do nothing, nothing will happen. I would love the opportunity to do an Indy 500 one day. To have that opportunity to kind of put adaptive motorsport on the map, I think it's something that might need to be done.
Welcome to Speed with Harvick and Buxton, fueled by Poet. And as always, we will talk racing. And today we're going to talk racing with a good friend, somebody whose story is so well known. Doesn't really need any more of an introduction other than to say he is Robert Wickens. How are you, my friend?
How you doing, Will?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. We've just been off air talking about the kids and white noise machines, which are, I think, a core essential for anyone with babies, right?
I got apps on my phone. I got plugged in one. I got wireless ones. You know, we're ready to rock.
Mate, racing not long ago in Long Beach, an amazing weekend for a couple of reasons. The documentary that you guys have made, I know a couple of our friends got a sneaky little private peek. So very excited about that. But most of all, man, just to see you out there on track, absolutely incredible. Pole position, leading the race. I mean, look, this is your bread and butter, right? This is what you do. But it's got greater meaning given the manner in which you now go racing. So can you start us off by talking about your path back to the front? Because for the past decade, you've had to break new ground in order to even go racing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, the passion to drive again after my accident never left, which I think was probably no surprise to anyone. But, you know, for me, it was, you know, I had the opportunity to get back into a race car with Brian Hurt Autosport in a TCR car with the help of Michael Johnson, who was a paralyzed driver that was racing for Brian Hurt Autosport. And that was my entry level back in. And so my first year of racing again with hand controls in 2022, we just basically used his system, just bought a second set and we were off and running. The interesting bit of it was Michael was paralyzed in a motocross accident as a kid and then only knew four-wheeled motorsport with hand controls. So his braking felt natural, felt normal, that just felt common to him. But for me, like I was envisioning this like hydraulic sensation, like I wanted to recreate what I've known to love with my feet for so many years. And so that's been the mission for so long. And I felt like that was going to be the key to unlock performance. And also that system was really kind of custom fitted for a TCR car. And I knew I wanted to go to the next step, which was the IMSA SportsCar Championship and beyond. You know, I wanted to get to the highest levels of motorsport possible. I didn't know what that looked like at the time. I didn't know if it was going to stop in TCR with Brian Hurt Autosport. I didn't know if I could have the opportunities to go onwards and upwards. And here we are a few years later, partnered with Bosch with their electronic braking system. And we put it into a Corvette Z06 GT3R that was all fitted by Pratt & Miller and Corvette Racing. And here we are having fun.
Amazing, man. So what is the sensation like? Explain it to us. How different is racing? How different is driving using hand controls?
You know, I think it's obviously a lot more common for me now than if you sat in my car and gave it a go, right? For me, it all started with simulation, right? With a home simulator on iRacing, just, you know, my theory was, you know, 10,000 hours and you can be a pro at anything type of thing, right? And it was also timing wise, the pandemic had just started, esports were front and center. So it was kind of like it all just aligned quite nicely. Obviously, no one hopes for a pandemic, but for me, selfishly, it kind of gave me a lot of free time to just like do laps and laps and laps and laps. And I did just that. And it wasn't easy at first. It's still not easy. I feel like every time I'm in the car, I'm getting better and better. And I felt like this year at Long Beach kind of showed just that. You know, I think I put together my most complete driving performance, probably with hand controls, period, from executing and qualifying to then, you know, starting from pole, leading every lap and handing the car over to my teammate Mason Filippi. And we were in for a good shot for victory for a long time in that race. So it was, yeah, you know, I think we're starting to get there. I just need to get in the car more often. I'm only doing the 5 sprint races this year in 2026. Same schedule that I ran last year. So the goal is already to get a full season in 2027. And you know, I feel like I have enough experience now that if I have the opportunity, I think I can give this thing a championship run.
You mentioned a little bit just in like one of your earlier answers, braking. and the difference between what was there initially and then what you've had to create as a result of that is such an important part of racing. People, often don't realize braking is probably the most critical aspect of racecraft. You're used to, with your legs, mashing the brake, right? But then you've got to have the dexterity of feel to be able to ease off, not lock a tire, not lock the brake. How do you do that? How do you get that feel, or can you replicate that feel through hand controls?
That's where a lot of the focus went. I would say 98% of the focus went into my braking sensation on this new electronic braking system, and with the controls that were developed by Pratt Miller. What we ended up creating it was also important for me because we can get as complicated as we want here, but depending on if it's a left-hand corner or a right-hand corner, I typically brake with my right hand so that way I can downshift the car with my left hand, right? And then when I'm applying throttle, I apply with my left hand so I can upshift easily.
Of course, right? Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah,
I would imagine everyone's like, oh, you don't like throttle with your right, brake with your left, like kind of how you do it with your feet. But what's interesting about like Long Beach hairpin, for example, really tight right-hand corner, what ends up happening there is because the paddle's on the steering wheel, when you turn, you can only reach so far. Yeah. So then I can't brake with my right anymore, and I'd have to continue braking with my left. So it's important to have the brake on both sides of the steering wheel, and then same with throttle on both sides of the steering wheel, because like turn 6 in Long Beach, for example, again, I would have to apply throttle with my right hand because of the amount of steering angle. I couldn't reach the throttle paddle on my left hand.
Oh, so
wow. It's one added nuance of learning tracks is I need to figure out kind of, what am I doing with my hands? And I'm building that Rolodex now where as we go track to track, I can kind of on the track walk, I'm like, oh, that's probably going to be a corner where I'll have to like tip in the throttle with one hand and switch. Like the corkscrew, as hard as a corkscrew is at Laguna Seca, I have to tip in throttle with my right hand. And as I'm falling down the hill, I need to switch hands and grab a gear all at the same time. Which frankly caught me off guard. So, but now years of experience, we're just used to it.
And is that where the 10,000 hours come in? Because you're having to rewire your brain from right foot, go fast, left foot, stop, to being right hand, stop, left hand, go fast.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's so different. I mean, I tell everyone, I think it was easier for me to learn with hand controls than it would be for you. And that's only because, like, when I first started driving on the sim, if something was happening in front of me, my initial reaction would be to hit the brakes with my feet, as anyone's would. But then my feet wouldn't work. So you quickly realize, like, oh, that didn't work. And then it's like, oh, yeah, it's all up here. Then you brake with your hands and you figure it all out on the sim. Where with you would physically apply a brake pedal. Like, for example, my home sim has foot brakes and throttles for friends and family. And even frankly, when I got it fitted, I was like, for me, maybe like rehab, like training, like I can apply the throttle with my right foot, but I can't take my foot off the throttle efficiently. So it might be a good just like hold it flat out technique, but that's pretty much as far as I can get. But so I think the mental connection for me, realizing that my feet wouldn't move with the reaction times that I want, it made me use my hands, I think, more effortlessly than it would if you were jumped in.
So this may sound like an odd question, but do hand controls present you with any advantages that you hadn't expected?
Honestly, I would say no. I mean, if I could go back to my feet tomorrow, I would. The big thing, which is important, is because I use an electronic braking system, a brake-by-wire system, between Bosch, IMSA, and Corvette Racing, they all work hand in hand from when we were developing the system to getting it homologated to then even we have, IMSA has constant telemetry on my braking system to make sure we're not gaining an advantage. Because, with electronic braking, I can have instantaneous, 2000 PSI of brake pressure, which isn't humanly possible. Right.
Got you.
So we put latencies and delays to match the human efforts, and the same thing, I think I can only brake at a maximum of 120 bar of brake pressure, which is on average the highest brake pressure you ever achieve in a Corvette Z06 GT3R. Right. And that's kind of, we tune the parameters. So there's just no way where I'm gaining an advantage. I would say I really don't think it is an advantage, but given that my hand control system bypasses the master cylinders on the car, it also
Yeah.
bypasses the brake bias adjustment. So
I
in order
guess.
for me to change brake bias, I have electronic buttons to go up and down. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot more user friendly. I change brake bias just as often as anyone else. So it's not like I'm gaining an advantage that way. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any advantage. I welcome anyone to give it a shot. It's honestly like Tommy Milner, a fellow Corvette driver, actually drove the very first shakedown because for obvious reasons, they wanted an able-bodied driver to do the first laps in case it, I guess, didn't work.
That
So
makes
Tommy,
sense. Yeah.
so I mean, it didn't make sense at the time. Like, let me drive it. I want to drive this car, and
Yeah. Right. Right. I've
I had to
spent all the
watch.
time developing it.
Yeah, and
I guess advantages was probably the wrong word for me to use in that. I didn't want to make it seem like you were getting an advantage by using the hand controls. I think it's more just on. Was there anything that surprised you as a racer in terms of kind of like the usability of it, where it sort of surprised you and you went, oh, this is this is kind of cool and something that maybe hadn't sort of come into your mindset or hadn't been available that you were used to from using your feet. I'm just trying to get into that space with you where you're in the car and things are coming at you in a very, very different way. If there was anything that kind of surprised you with it in a positive way.
I would say developing the brake sensation that we end up having now in the Corvette was definitely, once I applied the brake in reality for my first test, I was like, oh, wow, that's like exactly the sensation I've been looking for since starting with hand controls. And what we ended up doing is creating a small little damper in the center part of the steering wheel with a bunch of little tiny bump rubbers and packers. It was actually a really cool little thing, but it's basically on the damper dyno, because of course in a race team would do that. It's 100 pounds per inch of travel is kind of my spring rate. So that's kind of what my hydraulic sensation is all based off of. So yeah, it's kind of to gain resolution and braking feel, you also have to gain a bit of physicality. If not, it becomes too effortless and almost like a road car brake,
Yeah.
So it's tough. I mean, it definitely requires a lot of grip strength. The wheelchair kind of gives me that naturally a little bit. Now the next step, if I could do a version 2, would be to work on the throttle a little bit, because we just kind of ran out of time and we just put a simple like spring on it for like stiffness. But I think we can get pretty clever with something there as well.
Fascinating, man. Has your mindset changed over the past decade? Is there a difference in the gratitude that comes your way in terms of racing?
I kind of see it go both ways. I feel like, obviously being a father first has made me realize there's a lot more to life than your passion, like your profession that you love so much. And then as a driver, like I feel like in a way I'm trying to make up for lost time, and mentally I keep trying to switch myself out of that because that's not constructive to the environment. But I lost 4 years of the peak of my athletic career, right? That I feel like I'm obviously I'm 37 years old now.
You don't look a day over 30, mate.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'll take that. But I feel like I'm just the 20 or 28-year-old driver I was when I was paralyzed, or I'm just trying to kind of continue where I left off, even though there was a bit of a hiatus in between. And I do definitely take things with a lot more gratitude. Like, my qualifying in Long Beach, the moment they told me I was P1, I ultimately got bumped down to P2, and then the guy got disqualified and I got the pole inherited back. But there was a moment of time where I crossed the line and I was P1. They came on the radio that told me P1. I just like started screaming. I was like crying in my helmet. I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is qualifying. Like, it's not even like, but I felt like for me, it was just such a milestone, like an achievement that like I belong here,
Yeah.
Because obviously there's been a lot of resistance along the way, whether if it's people saying that, I don't belong in the stuff, or it's dangerous, or this or that. Like, there's people always questioning, right? And as a driver, I don't know if this is just me internally. I would actually love to get other people's opinion, but I feel like if I make an honest driver error and crash, people will always question first if it's because I'm disabled. And I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but in my head, I'm like, so I'm always like risk versus reward. I'm making sure that I never like put a wheel off, but then also I want to go as quickly as possible. And when you put it on the line, like sometimes things go south, right?
Yeah.
But like I know we had a failure in Nürburgring a couple of years ago, and that was the first thing everyone thought was just like, oh well, it's the hand controls, it's the hand controls. That maybe you should stop and blah. It's like, but you know, parts fail. It could have happened to anybody. It just happened to happen on my car with the system that we put into the car at the time before we introduced Bosch. So it's
But
interesting.
racing drivers make mistakes as well. How many times every single weekend do we see drivers at the top level push too hard, brake too late, make a mistake, go into the barriers? That's what racing drivers do. You're pushing the envelope. You're trying to find that extra thousandth of a second
For sure.
to
And again,
go
I don't know
fast. That's the whole point of driving.
and I don't know if that's just me and I'm on a little like internal battle that I'm fighting. Like I don't know if that's just if I'm like creating it out of nothing, but like that's what I feel when I'm in the car. And even I don't know. I don't want any headline of that I crashed because I don't want to put any doubt, right?
This is obviously it's a part of your story. Okay, the crash, and it will always be a part of your story. Are you sick of it? As you said, like if you have a crash, that people's first thoughts will be, it's the hand controls, or shouldn't be in the car, as you said. Like, do you think people will ever judge you on, like, as you should be judged, on your merits as a racing driver, or do you fear that this will always be a part of the narrative? Is there a desire to move beyond that?
For sure. I mean, I feel like everyone that I compete against just see me as a competitor.
Yeah.
Every other IMSA WeatherTech sports car driver on that grid, when the helmet's on, I don't feel like they treat me any different. I feel like I'm fought for every inch like everyone else. And that's honestly what I love so much about motorsport is it doesn't matter of your sex, doesn't matter your nationality, doesn't matter you're a able-bodied, disabled-bodied, if you can get into a race car and you can put in a lap time, you can go fast, like world's your oyster, you can do whatever you want to do. And that's just what I love so much is I'm not doing an adaptive equivalent to motorsport. I'm racing in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. And I think that's just the coolest opportunity. But in terms of being sick of it, I'm getting a little tired of seeing the crash when it pops up on a daily
Yeah.
daily basis, right? But it's a part of my life. It's a part of my journey. You can't change your past. All you can do is look forward. And, in a way, I mean, I learned a lot about myself from that accident in 2018. I think if you ask anyone close to me, I feel like I'm a better human being coming out the other side than I was heading into it, right? I feel like you just kind of prioritizes your life a little bit, and you kind of realize that, like I said, I mean, obviously being a dad took it to the next level, but understanding there's a lot more to this world than just your job, right? And I'm lucky enough to have such a great one.
You were always one of the good guys, though, Robert. Don't ever think that you weren't. You were always one of the guys that everybody liked. It's not like you had a sudden epiphany of, oh shit, I've got to stop being an asshole. Like you've always been one of the good guys. I wanna talk about the tech if I can, because I know you tested Formula E. Obviously, you're doing IMSA at the moment. Is this tech that can be transposed into any type of car?
It is. I mean, the geography inside the cockpit is going to be the first hurdle, right? I mean, with the Bosch electronic braking modules that I use, it's the same electronic braking system that is used in the GTP cars on the rear axle for their hybrids in IMSA. We just times it by 2 and put basically one module for the rear axle, one module for the front axle, and the ECU in the middle, and they communicate, and they, based off of an electronic signal that I give on the steering wheel, my brake paddle, it then tells the computer what to do and shoots out brake pressure out to the calipers. And it's a really cool system. It is transferable. It's very modular. I mean, anyone that can stick their head inside my car and take a look, it looks like it belongs in a race car. It's not like for example, the first generation that I used in TCR when we first started, it was a pneumatic actuator that actually pushed the able-bodied brake pedal down. So there was a whole like air compressor where like the passenger seat lived to build up the pressure to use this pneumatic actuator all the time. And like when you looked at it, it looked strange. There's a bunch of mechanical linkages and everything all the way down. Like it looked obviously a little clunky, but it worked very well. Where this Bosch system, like if a stranger just stuck their head in a race car, you wouldn't know that it's for a disabled driver, right? And it's such a well-engineered, thought-out system. No surprise coming from Bosch. But yeah, I mean, it would fit in anything. It could fit in a prototype. It could fit in a NASCAR. It could fit in an IndyCar. It could fit in a Formula E car. I mean, you might have to move some bits around to free up some space depending on the car, but yeah, it's definitely small enough. I mean, the biggest issue would probably be the weight addition. The beauty of, in my world, within sports car racing is with balance of performance. None of the cars are really running at like the bare minimum weight. So what we end up doing is offsetting the weight of my system, which is roughly, I'm probably getting this wrong, but I think it's like 10 kilos. So it's actually not that heavy in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And then we just remove that from like the BOP ballast. So I'm still the same car weight as my competitors, but just in a different manner. So
what's next? What's the bucket list for you? If this can be transferred to, as you say, NASCAR or IndyCar, you're already running it in IMSA. How about Le Mans, like Daytona 24? Like what's the goal for you now? Where would you love to race?
I think I love where I am in IMSA. I just want to try to find a way to be a full-time figure in the championship. I feel like I haven't lost an edge from when I was kind of in my prime in that IndyCar season in 2018. Mentally, I feel like I'm even stronger than I was then. My work at Andretti Global on the IndyCar side as a driver coach, I feel like I'm like more analytical and more focused on driver nuances stuff and understanding. I feel like I'm a much more actually well-rounded professional today than I even was in 2018. Because I've been on the engineering stand for so many years, I understand, like, I feel like I'm a better communicator now in the car because you see the ripple effect of, what a hot-headed driver can do to the humans on the timing stand. And as a driver, you often forget that connection. But yeah, I mean, I feel like being a full-time driver in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship is goal number one. Hopefully we can make that happen for 2027. So that would already tick bucket lists of 24 Hours of Daytona, Sebring 12, Petite, right? So many great races. GT3 is already running in Le Mans, so why not tick that one if we could? I mean, if we're going wish list. And, it's still close to me, but I would love the opportunity to do an Indy 500 one day.
Yes.
I don't know what that looks like. Obviously, being paralyzed in an IndyCar, living in Indianapolis, it's very rare to have a race with so much history and legacy to do something that's never been done. So I think to have that opportunity to kind of put adaptive motorsport on the map, I think it's something that might need to be done, and to do it and to compete. And really what I want to do though is I want to make sure I line myself up where like I don't just want to be like on the grid, right? Like I want to compete. That's why I'm in IMSA. That's why I'm doing everything I do, is because I know I'm capable of doing it. And aligning myself with great teammates and a great team, we're showing that anything's possible. And so for me, like, I think that's where the Indy 500 gets a little special, a little unique, given, we all know what that race is, right? It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to get competitive. And I want to make sure that if the opportunity was there, I'd want it to also be the right opportunity.
Would be incredible. Any one of those would be incredible, and we'd love to see it. We'd absolutely love to see it.
Throw them all in there in the same year, and we can do it year on year for the next 10 years.
Let's do it. You mentioned your work with Andretti and how much that's brought to you personally. What is it like being on that other side of the fence and being a driver coach and getting to bring all of your experience to bear? To help other people win in the seat?
No, I think the first thought, I mean, I'm sure this is my first real job I've ever had, right? So normally I was just pursuing a passion and driving race cars and thankfully getting paid to do it for a bunch of years. And now with my coaching, I have deliverables Monday to Friday with reports and pre-events and post-events and all the other stuff. And it's like this new world that I had to get used to. But it's a pretty good job, I have to admit. And I think what makes it a good job is the feeling valued in my profession, right? I mean, showing up at the track and upper management asking for my thoughts on this and that, and drivers coming to me asking for, it's like just feeling a part of the team and a valued part of the team at that. It's been a really rewarding journey. Obviously, all of us drivers are pretty unique in how we work. So it's tough. Obviously, like how I approach Marcus Ericsson is different to how I approach Kyle Kirkwood, and same with Will Power. And, learning kind of the give and take on what they need in each situation. It just kind of just comes with communication. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. And thankfully, I like to think they're enjoying me. And so far, we're doing all right.
It feels like a really great kind of symbiotic relationship for you with that team. As you say, 3 great drivers with Marcus and Kyle and Will. I know they were looking to run a 4th car at Indy this year for Colton. It's not going to happen because F2 now is running Miami and Canada. But I like the sound of a 4th Andretti. Pulling into what we discussed before, a Robert Wickens Indy 500 entry. Have you discussed it with Mr. Dan Towers? Does it come up over dinner ever?
Can't say it's come up of yet. I think, it's an interesting spot because they do employ me for my services as a driver coach. So, and if I did do that event for them, I wouldn't be doing that for their most important race of the year. So it's, I'd like to hope the idea might come up to them. I'd love it if they would approach me with it.
They clearly already rate you as a driver, otherwise they wouldn't have you in as a driver coach. It feels, I know you're far too modest for this, but it feels to me like the perfect opportunity would be you and a 4th Andretti. I'll bring it up with Dan when I see him over the month of May, so you don't have to, mate. Do listen, I know we're almost running out of time, but we always like to ask our guests, what's your favorite type of motorsport to watch?
Man, favorite type of motorsport to watch for the longest time was MotoGP.
Oh, yeah?
Haven't watched it of late over the last couple of years, but while I was over in Europe, it was like I'd watch that more than Formula One. So just, the racing was just so exciting. Kind of the end of the Valentino Rossi era, Casey Stoner, Pedrosa and all those guys like this, like going at it. I think there's something about like MotoGP is just putting it all out there. It's like next level to what we do in 4-wheel motorsport, right? And I have massive respect for that. And then like anything, I mean, honestly, recently now with my new life with twins and Wesley running wild around the house, I mean, we don't even turn on the TV. So when I'm home, like motorsport's not really on at all. So it's he's on the Paw Patrol train right now. So we're
okay.
Yeah, but it's all right.
Paw Patrol's a big one. We're not quite at Paw Patrol level just yet. My little one is addicted to Mary Poppins. Another question we love to ask is, who do you think is the greatest driver in the world right now? Regardless of championship, who do you think is a cut above? Even if there is just one.
Oh man, I mean, I think the obvious one would have to be Max Verstappen. I mean, I think what he did, I wasn't fully on board in his first few championships, right? But I think what he did last year and the way he presented himself and with the maturity and just the ambassador for the sport that he's become, I think he's an all-rounder. I think if you look at how he outperformed that car compared to his teammates and how he just maximized every single session, like I think any driver can respect that. Anyone can get in a good car and win, but to drag a car that frankly has no right being on a podium and winning like 6 in a row and just, man, kind of similar to what like Alex Palou's doing currently in IndyCar, right? It's just when you operate at that high of a level for so long, everyone feels like they have to work harder, but you can only work as hard as you can physically work until you start making errors. And that's why you see it all the time, like final pit stop sequences, like someone makes a mistake, or on track, it's like half of these wins that Alex gets, he puts himself in the position to win, but they're also kind of gifted to him in some capacity as well. And that's just down to just the intensity that team operates on. Like, they put so much pressure on their competitors that the competitor has to be perfect to beat them. And if you can only be as good as you can be, right? As if you start trying too hard is when errors happen. And I think that's something that we're trying to keep true at Andretti as much as we can is let's just stay in our lane, and if we know we're capable of winning. We've shown we're capable of winning. We've done it in the pits. We've done it on track. We've done it in any capacity. Like, he's a beatable person. They just don't make errors. So it's just making sure that you're just as buttoned up as possible.
And a great start to the season for you guys over at Andretti. Kyle, of course, leading the championship early on. Alex with a slim lead now heading into the month of May. But what an amazing start you guys at Andretti have made. When we talk about Max being, something really exceptional today, who's your all-time hero? Do you have an all-time racing hero? Or even a hero not in racing? Like, who's somebody that you look up to in life?
I think for me, being Canadian, Ron Fellows was always a huge help, obviously, from what he accomplished in his sports car career, but also what he gave back to the Canadian motorsport industry. He started a karting championship for fellow Canadians, and myself, James Hinchcliffe, Daniel Morad, the list can go on of drivers that were given a platform to show their abilities and to then progress from karts to cars. He's always been one that has been very selfless in what he's done as a driver, but then also his post-driving career with building up Canadian Tire Motorsports Park to what it is today. And he's high on the list for me of people that I look up to. We talk as regularly as possible. But yeah, I think growing up as a kid, it was hard not to idolize Michael Schumacher. I was a big fan of Kimi Räikkönen for his kind of like, I don't care attitude. He was a big guy to obviously root for when I was growing up. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Love it. Mate, finally, I want to go back, if we can, and if you'll forgive me, to the day of the accident. And I don't want to talk about the accident itself, but I want to know if there is one piece of advice that you could give yourself, looking back at all the time that you've had since, everything you've experienced. What would you tell yourself in that moment about what's about to come your way and what you've learned, what you've experienced, what you've learned perhaps about yourself, that you could tell yourself in that moment?
The big thing is I would just tell myself to, keep digging, right? The hardest thing when you're fighting paralysis, and even like through the hospital stages, but more so once I was into like rehab and trying to get my life back, there was days, weeks, almost months sometimes where you just got no neurological recovery, and you're just like every day for 6 hours a day just trying to wiggle a toe and it's not going. And it obviously mentally it's exhausting, but physically it's draining. And kind of just if someone could tell you, like, future you, like, it's working, just believe in the system, that would have given me the light at the end of the tunnel that I needed on most days, right? I tell everyone, as physically draining as that rehab was, mentally it was 10 times harder, right? There wasn't probably a week that went by where I didn't cry at some point, right? Just wondering, because you're just putting in so much heart and grit into it, and that's what it takes. And Sam Schmidt words it perfectly. The only guarantee from paralysis is that if you do nothing will happen, right? And that was something that for me, I was like, okay, like that resonated with me. And it's like, well, I'm not just gonna sit here. I've never been a guy to just sit still from birth till present. I think I learned about myself that I'm a lot more resilient than I thought I was. I thought I was strong. I thought I was brave, but sometimes, you feel like you're just telling yourself that when you're at the gym and having a good workout, I think seeing, I'm proud of who I am today. I'm proud of what I've become. I'm proud of the father that I am. I'm happy that I have the opportunity to do all of those things, and then on top of it, I get to drive race cars. So there's a lot to be grateful for. And, I think, I would just tell myself, when I was in the trenches and at rock bottom, that, it gets better, right? And everyone always tells you it gets better, but you never believe it at the moment. And I think that's kind of the hardest thing.
I love that, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, buddy. Really appreciate your candor. And if there is one thing I know that has always defined you, it is that you are as exceptional a human being as you are a racing driver. And I mean that truly. Thank you so much for being on the show, buddy. Very, very much appreciated. We cannot wait to see all that comes your way. Can't wait to see the documentary once it's had its premiere and it's finally out. I know a lot of people who've seen it already who say that it's absolutely brilliant. But we wish you nothing but continued success. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Will. Appreciate it.